A lot of people say that idea essentially has an expiry date, and if you get an idea you think you really should build, you have a certain time window in which you should jump and kind of build it. Otherwise, someone else is going to build it because the idea is not unique to you, right? And in that case, how do you financially plan for a situation like that?
You don't. You shouldn't. If you decide to plan before taking the plunge,
Hmm.
most people who don't take the plunge, they keep planning for years and decades. So you could have said that Amazon was there. Why would there be a Flipkart?
Right.
Right? Or if there is already a Swiggy, or then why do you need a Zomato?
Makes sense.
Right? Or there is a Blinkit. Why is there a Zepto?
Right.
So it's not always the first one that is always going to win. Yeah, you want to do it right. You want to build right.
Mhm.
You want to build for the long term. But yeah, if you plan too much, there are 100 reasons not to do it. The challenge is, do you have that one reason which outweighs all those 100?
Makes sense.
And
Makes
if you have that, just do it.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Fintech Ki Baat Dil Se. In this episode, we have with us Mr. Chirag Shah, who's founder and CEO of MyPulse. Hey Chirag, thank you so much for taking out the time today and joining us.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
It's our pleasure. And we are super excited to learn from you about what you're building at MyPulse. So, just for everyone's context, MyPulse is essentially an organization that's building in financial intelligence for SMEs, right? And please correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, it essentially kind of helps MSMEs, get the pulse of what's happening in their finances as it happens, and take essentially proactive decisions on that, decisions regarding credit and otherwise. And they also kind of integrate with lenders and banks on the other end to kind of give them real-time data to kind of take credit decisions and kind of improve their overall customer profile in terms of knowledge about the customer profile, so I should say. So without me explaining any further, I think Chirag, it's over to you. Before we deep dive into what MyPulse is doing, let's kind of understand a bit about what your journey has been, and then we'll take it from there. Over to you.
I grew up in Mumbai, did engineering here, went to US to study math and finance, started working at the investment bank, started with Merrill in New York, moved to London with Wachovia, worked with a hedge fund in London, and then decided that there was an opportunity. I saw a space which was opening up post the credit crisis in 2007,
Mm-hmm.
and started on my own. I started in London with a lender called Nucleus Commercial Finance. So I
Understood.
launched it in 2011, grew that business aggressively till 2016,
Mm-hmm.
decided that the way we were growing was fantastic, but there was more to be done, not just from a pure lending perspective, but more from a tech infrastructure perspective for businesses and for lending industry. And decided that if that I wanted to do from India. So moved
Got
to
it.
India back in 2017 and started MyPulse.
Understood. So it's been what, almost 13, 14 years since you've started on your own, been in London till 2017 and then came back here?
Correct, yes. A bit over that.
Amazing.
I'm almost getting to 15 years now.
Great, great, great. So, I've almost had over 100 founders here, and what really intrigues a lot of budding entrepreneurs that kind of watch this podcast is uh, when did you essentially realize ki, this is the time I need to switch to entrepreneurship, or the time is right. The time is right to kind of jump into entrepreneurship right now.
So then I was at a fund back in 2007, 2008,
Hmm.
right? You're talking about the peak of the credit crisis.
Right,
And you're
right, right.
looking there and everybody, the only focus was defense, right?
Hmm.
Protection. What's going on? How do we protect from this? And I was sitting there, and for me, it was a great opportunity, right? I mean, chaos creates opportunities.
True,
When you talk
true.
about financial services, very well established, very well regulated industry,
Hmm.
you it, you need some level of chaos for the opportunity to be there for new entrants to make a difference.
Right.
And that's really what I was feeling. That's what I was sensing, and yeah, decided to do it instead of thinking long hard whether to do it or not. Saw the opportunity and decided to just do it. And to be honest, it really helped. Very supportive partner really helps. My wife was,
Of course.
she's always been a great sounding board. and it was great having her around. I believed in me. I believed in the idea. Probably she believed in me 3 times more than I believed in me. So that played a
That
big role as
always
well.
helps, and that makes a
Yes.
difference. True, true,
Yeah.
true. A lot of these founders that we have here, and a lot of these budding entrepreneurs always ask, how do you kind of plan for setting up entrepreneurship, right? Specifically when an idea has an expiry date. A lot of people say that. We can probably have a different view, but when a lot of people say that idea essentially has an expiry date, and if you get an idea you think you really should build, you have a certain time window in which you should jump and kind of build it. Otherwise, someone else is going to build it because the idea is not unique to you, right? And in that case, how do you financially plan for a situation like that?
You don't. You shouldn't. If you decide to plan before taking the plunge,
Hmm.
most people who don't take the plunge, they keep planning for years and decades, and that is the biggest regret in lives they had, right?
Makes sense.
So it's really, I don't think at least personally, I don't feel it's a lot of planning. The second point you raised,
Hmm.
I have a very different opinion in that. I don't think always being the first to market is essentially it's not like 100% win or lose thing.
Fair,
If you look at
fair.
most sectors today, right, there are
Hmm.
plenty. In India, you look at it, right? You could have said that Amazon was there. Why would there be a Flipkart,
Right.
right? Or if there is already a Swiggy, or then why do you need a Zomato?
Makes sense.
Right? There is a Blinkit. Why is there a Zepto?
Right.
So it's not always the first one that is always going to win. Yeah, you want to do it right. You want to build right.
Hmm.
You want to build for the long term. But yeah, if you plan too much, there are 100 reasons not to do it. The challenge is, do you have that one reason which outweighs all those 100?
Makes sense.
And if
Makes
you
sense.
have that, just do it.
No, I think that's a brilliant insight. I think kind of also changed the way of how I look at things. But really, really interesting way of looking at things. Having said that, when we are actually talking about building things, you started off building it in London and then came back to India. So I know this is probably a very repeated question, but what kind of brought you back to India back then? Back in 2017, you said, right?
Yeah, so I mean, I always missed India. I left India in 2000s, went to US to
Hmm.
study, then started working there. I met my wife there.
Hmm.
And both of us always had this thing that we are going to end up back in India.
Oh,
We
okay.
we, we just like it back in India. It's home.
Hmm.
We never felt the same way anywhere else. So
Makes
for us,
sense.
it was always the case. And I think the trigger point for us was when I had my first kid.
Hmm.
When my son was born, that was like, now we had a ticker. Our general thing was, if you're going back, you're going back before they start schooling, so it's easier for them to adjust.
True,
And that
true.
was really for us, that kind of set the clock in motion and said, okay, now it's either put up or shut up.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Makes sense. All right. So, how was your experience, building MyPulse from scratch? I think, did you start completely in India or did you start there and then shift to the base here?
No, so they were two separate businesses.
Okay.
So when Pulse started, they were both operating in the same industry. At the
Hmm.
end of the day, Pulse deals with business data,
Right.
right? I mean, we simplify business data, both acquiring the data, using the data repeatedly for multiple purposes. That's what Pulse does. Nucleus was a user of the data.
Hmm.
So that's where I saw the gap when I was there as we were building Nucleus for 4 years. That's where I saw the real gap, the real opportunity, and said, okay, that is actually the player is much bigger than just building a lending entity.
Hmm.
The player was really to build a full-fledged infrastructure which can work in the SME ecosystem, not just for lending, but for multiple purposes.
Right. Right. Right.
So that's how Pulse came about.
Fair. Fair. Fair enough. So, in your journey of building Pulse in India for almost 8.5, 9 years, right now, uh, what essentially has been the most humbling piece that you have come across?
I, j- I- it's just a lot of the times, a lot of things you'll ask me, I will keep coming back to people in
Hmm.
most instances, right? And you feel that, hey, you've run a business for a long period of time in UK. You've started it. It's actually a nice growing business, profitable, fantastic. you come and you feel it should be relatively easy to build a team.
True.
It's not. It's not. Right. I mean, to be okay, I'll rephrase. It's very easy to build a team. Building the right team,
Hmm.
it takes time. The
No,
amount
it
of
does.
it takes you can find a lot of skill as well
Hmm.
very quickly. But to get that right combination of skill and attitude and convincing them to come on board as a first person, second person, third person,
True. True.
it's a whole different challenge, especially for someone coming into a new geography with no. So I think that
Hmm.
what my mindset was, and my first few months, it makes you realize that hey, you have to think of it as starting from
Indeed.
scratch, right?
True.
And
True. True.
it was it was for first few months were super challenging in readjusting the thought process on certain areas.
Fair. Fair. And I think in any situation, and most of the founders have kind of said that building the first set of core team members is always extremely difficult. Getting the first few people on board to leave their existing jobs and join your idea passion, and make them feel passionate about building what you are building. Because one thing is to be passionate about what you are building, but the second is conveying that passion to someone else and making them excited and making them take a plunge is even more difficult, right? So what essentially are your, let's say, 2 3 insights for all the founders out there who are in the process of hiring their first few team members?
Just spend more time socially with people you're bringing on board.
Mm-hmm.
If you have if the thought of spending 2 hours with them not working
Mm-hmm.
scares you, they are the wrong people. Skill is
Makes
great.
sense.
They can have the best skill, right? They can have everything, but are those people you're willing to spend 2 hours socially, 3 hours socially
Mm-hmm.
with no work discussion, right?
Makes sense.
Because when you start on the journey, yes, work is like everything, right? And it's kind of taking you over. But if
True.
you are with people that you're only willing to do that with and nothing else,
Mm-hmm.
it makes it way more challenging. Because when you start the journey, right, it's not a straight line. And at the
Mm-hmm.
start, there are a lot of tips. And that's where the core team really comes in, right? And as a founder, you want to keep everyone motivated. It's a lot easier when you can socially connect.
Indeed. So I think
Right.
that's really insightful. It makes a lot of sense. And given the fact that you're kind of going to spend, let's say, probably 8 to 10 hours a day, bare minimum, with these folks, 6 or 7 days a week, at least in the starting couple of years of your startup, it makes sense to be able to kind of do that comfortably. Does make sense. Having said that, right, you have been operational for almost 7 8 years. How do you look at fundraising as an activity in India? Do you see any differences of how it is being done in other countries, and what your experience has been like?
So it's probably the question I'm not the best suited to answer
Mm-hmm.
because in our lives, we have raised capital twice. Once
Okay.
back in 2011 when I started Nucleus,
Mm-hmm.
and for Pulse as well. We have only raised very small amount of capital for an acquisition once in our lifetime. So
I see.
we are a super unit economics focused business. I am a super unit economics focused person. So for us,
Mm-hmm.
it has always been we haven't had to raise equity capital per se multiple rounds or multiple times.
Fair,
So
fair, fair
I
enough.
yeah, unfortunately one area where I don't think I can contribute a lot of insights or knowledge or experiences.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Thank you for that. In that scenario, right? Given that you are a proper unit economic focused business who kind of focuses on profitability, how do you see, you know, essentially businesses that, and I'll keep it to, let's say, B2B businesses. I don't want to kind of mix both segments as for now. But if you look at purely B2B businesses who are raising rounds after round almost every 8 months or a year, and expanding, so as to say, how do you look at that model versus a unit economic focused model with us? Maybe when you look at the rate of growth and when you look at the rate of expansion, how would you look at, in a, sorry, an additional question, how would you also look at someone who's probably a competitor of yours, who's into the not probably unit economics focus as of now, but more into raising funds and expanding faster and capturing the market faster?
You see, there is no right or wrong model, right? It's at the end of the day what people are more comfortable with, and
Mm-hmm.
both work. We've seen both work, and we have seen both not work. So
Right.
there is no right answer, but it's also kind of a lot of it also comes from your experiences in life and people
Mhm.
you have dealt with in life and grown with or worked with who kind of left a lasting impression.
True.
And I think that was part of my part as well. The fund I used to work at,
Hmm.
I worked very closely with the with one of the partners who I really respected. And as a part of the thing, I think slowly I basically started developing the mindset that, guys, revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, cash flow is reality.
That rhymes. Wow, and that makes sense as well.
Right. So that for us is just kind of stuck with me
Hmm.
throughout. So as a business, and it kind of that filters down everywhere, right?
True.
And
True.
it's and
True.
it can be very
Absolutely.
frustrating for people as well, both within the business, for me personally as well. Because sometimes you're willing to sacrifice top line because you think, yeah, I don't think in the medium or even long term, it actually
Hmm.
contributes to the real things that matter. It's a great vanity matrix. It would sound great that, hey, your turnover has quadrupled.
Right.
But if that means that I've lost like 30% of my turnover as my uh, cash flow
Hmm.
outflow, then that was not something I wanted to do.
Fair
Okay,
enough.
I take pride in running the business. I take pride in owning the business substantially
Hmm.
and building it that way. So that it all kind of builds. So all of it comes together to the same thing. The product has to work. I just can't get my head around saying, oh, it will work sometime in 4 years when my volume becomes 5,000 times what it is right now.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Makes sense. So, if I were to kind of pose a hypothetical scenario wherein you are essentially approached by a founder who's at the verge of selecting one of the other paths for, let's say, next couple of years, in a B2B model, fintech SaaS B2B model kind of a thing, very similar to what you're doing, what would be your advice to that person right now?
It depends on the business. See, at the end of the day, it's not a one-off thing. It's what you believe in internally, what you want to do, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not a one-off decision. You are like today, if you decide X, and then tomorrow you are going to pivot to Y, because
Mm-hmm.
internally what you want to do is that. So, and as I said, there is no right or wrong in any
Right.
of this, right? So there is no fixed answer. There is no good answer. There is no bad answer. You should just kind of say, okay, how this is going to be in 1 year, 2 years time, and whatever is the more comfortable piece for you is what you should go with.
Got it. Got it. Fair enough. So if I were to kind of start something of my own in this in a specific, let's say, B2B kind of scenario, I'm sorry, I'm just prodding a little bit on this because this is a
No,
very
please, of course.
interesting piece. And how would someone working in that specific segment? I mean, I'm sticking to B2B right now, right? I'm not getting into B2C. That's a completely different ball game. Uh, how would you kind of optimize to be revenue positive, as well as unit economics positive?
See, B2B, so you reference B2C, so we'll just spend like 30 seconds on that.
Sure, sure.
B2C, I feel, is very efficient from a
Hmm.
data perspective,
Right.
right? And again, we always talk with a lending kind of a hat on, right?
True.
So the consumer data is very nicely aligned globally everywhere. It's
Hmm.
not just India, but you go to UK,
Right.
you go to US, anywhere. The consumer data is very nicely aligned. The friction points are lower. The biggest friction in lending is data, right?
True.
The
True.
friction points are lower. B2B is full of friction. Doesn't matter which country in the world you are in. I mean, you take India, right? Fantastic initiatives. You've got MCA, great.
Right.
But getting the information is a whole challenge, and using the information is a different challenge altogether, right?
Indeed.
So that is the level that inefficiency exists everywhere globally, and that is the
Hmm.
opportunity. So you're thinking
Hmm.
B2B space. If you're looking at B2B space, there are real problems to solve.
Right.
If you can make data easy, it makes everything flow. right? I mean, you have a classic example. If you look at last 10 years on the consumer side have been about BNPL.
Mm-hmm.
But what makes BNPL doable? A single data flow with all data nicely aligned with a credit bureau, which pretty much gets you there.
Right.
Even a credit bureau can't get you there with a business.
True. True.
And that's where the lag is. And that's what we have been instrumental in building, especially in UK and now are starting in India,
Mm-hmm.
where we have built the end-to-end flows where we are able to decision £500,000 loans in UK within 45 seconds.
Wow. That's
And they get
actually
disbursed within the
that's
next hour, right? So that's the level of efficiency we achieved. And we've built a lot of different things, and I won't take away anything from the team, but the core is the data. The
right.
first thing we worked on was sorting the data, sorting the gaps, fixing those things. And that has made everything else work.
Makes sense. Makes sense. No, perfect. I think thank you so much for sharing that. Uh, Having said that, right? I think we are almost at clock for our first segment, so I think I'll just leave you with one last question before we move on to the next segment, which is essentially what would be your let's say three don'ts, three big don'ts for someone who's starting up entrepreneurship. It can be very generic. It can be very focused. Up to you.
I mean, you can see that as again, we will come to the people thing. As I said, if you ask me the single most important thing, both from a do and don't, whichever way you want to take it, it's
Mm-hmm.
around people.
Okay.
There was a very great saying from
Mm-hmm.
Napoleon,
Mm-hmm.
right? He said, if you have an army of 10,000 lions in a war,
Right.
and the leader is a dog,
Hmm.
all of them are going to die a dog's death.
True.
If you have 10,000 dogs led by a lion, they are all going to fight like a lion. And that is, I genuinely believe in this. That has been my experience as well. When you're recruiting, that core team has to be your team of lions.
Makes sense.
Don't rush. Take your time, but get those lions around you. That is what will make it work.
Makes sense. Perfect. I think thank you so much. That I'm pretty sure our audience is going to find that really helpful and insightful. And thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing your journey once again. With that, I think we come to a close for our first segment, the founder story. I'll see you in the next segment, which is called Dhande Ki Baat, wherein we'll deep dive into what Pulse does and what essentially, are we getting into all the nitty gritties. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much.